What if everything you believed about success, title, grind, money, what if it was all a lie?
In today's episode, we're cracking open hustle culture and redefining what it means to thrive in a world where job security is fleeting and burnout is branded as ambition.
Hmm. Burnout as ambition. That's my favorite topic, I think.
Mm. Well, I don't know about you, but during the pandemic, I felt the burnout of work. I worked 60 hours a week. I felt like I was, going to get like a golden star, more than 100% of my bonus. And I felt successful, and at the end of the day, all I had was exhaustion and disappointment.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic because I think we are right on the precipice of truly redefining success. And, I think I was telling you before the show, I have a memory growing up that, I was raised in a really capitalistic corporate family. And the motto in my family was the one who dies with the most toys wins.
Mm.
And it really, from a value perspective, that just for me as I grew older and started to determine what success meant for me, I realized that didn't really align
Mm.
for my own personal values.
Have you, there is what I'm seeing on social media, there is a change and people are foregoing hustle culture. And I hear that we may have a guest that could help provide more
We,
clarity.
we don't just have a guest, we have the guest
Mm,
to have this conversation with.
mm.
So let me take a moment. I'm going to introduce Melissa Dinwiddie. And I'm gonna just straight read her bio, y'all, because you know me. I work better with words. So, Melissa Dinwiddie helps leaders and teams turn the impossible into reality by unlocking their creative potential. A Juilliard-trained dancer turned innovation strategist, she draws from a rich background as a professional artist, jazz singer-songwriter, and improv performer. And yes, we will be doing a brief improv for y'all. No, I'm teasing. Melissa works with companies like Google, Meta, and Salesforce to build cultures of bold experimentation, collaboration, and resilience. She's the author of The Creative Sandbox Way and a sought after keynote speaker known for interactive experiences that spark insight and action. When she's not helping others innovate, you'll find her making art or jamming on bass and ukulele, sometimes at the same time. Oh my God,
What that's
Melissa.
impressive. Welcome to
Ah.
the show, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so delighted to be here. Any podcast with the title from illumination to innovation just warms my heart and is the right place for me to be. So,
Here you are. Welcome.
We are like peas in a pod here.
Mhm.
I swear to God.
yeah.
So I'm curious, Melissa. Why don't you jump into the conversation that we were just having? Like, what are your thoughts on how success gets defined and how it's
You know,
evolving?
it's really interesting because I was just thinking about that phrase, "The person with the most toys
Uh,
wins," and I was just thinking about that the other day. I can't I was, like, cleaning my house or something, and that is so anathema to everything about the way that I operate in the world.
Mhm.
But I don't know if you've noticed, but there are some people who are kinda at the top of the heap right now in where I live in the United States. That's how they operate,
uh,
Mhm.
and, it's causing a few little problems.
Um, I think it's an interesting thing because in my experience, and this isn't true. I mean, no, I hate to make generalized statements because obviously there's anything can be true. But in my experience, when I meet somebody who's really focused on having the most toys, they really seem unfulfilled in so many different aspects of their life.
Yeah.
well, because 'cause you're constantly going, there's a carrot dangling, and nothing's ever enough because I think what they're looking for is really in here.
Yeah, it's very externalized, right? It's an externalized way of feeling successful, but it's sort of like you can have this, I guess, visual, recognition of something that you've done. But at the end of the day, if you're lonely or disconnected or you don't feel purpose in the
Mhm.
work that you're doing, you're never ever those toys aren't ever gonna matter. And then
Absolutely.
you're gonna die, and it's like, the toy isn't the legacy. And so that's the other big thing too. It's like, what are you leaving behind?
Mhm.
A whole bunch of stuff that's gonna get sold at an auction
Yeah,
or
you're not taking the toys with you.
yeah, you're not taking the toys with you.
You can't.
Exactly.
Well, Melissa, in your opinion, do you see that we are like this current model of hoarding toys that defines success? Is that currently, like, I guess, transitioning into something else, or are we still on that same path as this collective?
Yeah, like, is that still a relevant statement right now?
So here's the reality as I see it. I think human's gonna human, and I think greed is
People all the time.
kill people all the time, and I don't think that that frozen need is gonna go away until we, solve that frozen need that people have. That's a very, very deep need for connection that in some people is broken.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't know how to solve it. I don't have the answers, but those people for whom that is broken are going to keep trying to solve it through, going after all the toys.
And, and this is we talk about success, right? And how how grounded is that success in reality? You have a job that could go away at any time, or the market
Yeah.
can turn and all of a sudden all of your investments have now shifted,
Mhm.
or, it's like these things that we, again, externalize as we externalize what we think success is, but it's very fragile. Right? Like it seems like it's a very
Absolutely.
fragile thing and something that we might have some control over, but that we also might not have any control over at all in some cases. Um, I think that in and of itself, if people understood that more for themselves, like really that they have more power
Yeah.
than they realize, like that self-empowerment, that sense of self-empowerment, and that success coming from within. I think if people understood that, they would maybe approach sort of even that hustle culture or the way that they approach their own careers a little bit differently. Um,
Yeah, it's really challenging, isn't it? Because we're swimming in this soup that's very hard for us to see. It's like fish don't understand water because they're swimming in it, right?
Mhm.
And we're swimming in this soup of white supremacist patriarchal culture
yes.
that tells us that in order, that success looks like this certain thing.
Yes.
Capitalist capitalism,
Mhm.
going after the car and the job and
The
the
biggest
house,
title, the biggest
the biggest title, the lots of money, the I don't know, the vacation to Tahiti or what I don't know, whatever we see in the magazines and the advertisements and all of that. And pushing against that is really hard. And stepping back and saying, actually, what makes me feel happy and satisfied is kind of the opposite of that. That's really hard to get in touch with that.
Uh-huh.
When everything around you is saying, this is the definition of success. This is the definition of happiness.
and that definition is wrapped up in fear of not having it. So when you
Absolutely.
yeah, when you do try to like tap into that more internal thing, you're conditioned to fear that loss
Mhm.
of whatever,
Yeah.
whatever
Plus
that
there's
is.
plus there's the reality of you have to feed yourself.
Yeah.
You have to clothe yourself and you have to provide shelter for yourself and how to do that inside of a system that we're all living in the system. So some people have figured out to how to operate outside of this system,
Mhm.
but if you are still going to operate to some degree inside of this system, how are you going to do that? You know?
100%. I mean, decades ago, when I was considering going to college for dance, my parents told me, because I was first generation college student that it would be impossible for me to pay my bills
Yep.
on a dancer's salary or lack thereof.
Yep.
And they encouraged me to study. They gave me a list of things that they prefer. I did none of those, but here we are. Um, and to your point, like we have to feed ourselves. We have to figure out a way to provide shelter, clothe ourselves. So um I went on a path of just working, heads down, do my best after college to like get a job, work, 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 work. And it felt like I was hustling, albeit I didn't have like multiple streams of income, but it was a constant grind.
Mhm.
I personally felt my creativity was stifled. All I saw was black and white numbers. How could I get the next promotion? Melissa, do you find that hustle culture could stifle creativity in people?
So I resonate with this so much because I also, I went to Juilliard. I was only there for a year because I got injured while I was there, and I ended up leaving and going back to UC Berkeley, where I had been for a year before Juilliard, and you know, uh, ended up sort of following the academic path for a while,
Mhm.
which felt to me very black and white. Like I was
Yeah.
living. I mean, I identified during those years as a non-creative person. That's how I perceived myself. But even after that, when I kind of fell backwards into a career as a visual artist, as a calligrapher, I was living essentially hustle culture. I mean, I wasn't making like a bazillion dollars, but I was making a living in Silicon Valley, which is not easy to do, from my art. But I was believing this story in my head that said that everything I made had to bring in money.
Mhm.
Mm.
And everything I made had to be amazing, had to be excellent. And if that's not hustle culture, I don't know what is.
Yes.
And as a result of that, my relationship with my creativity was completely poisoned. And I never made art. I can't really say never, but I almost never, very, very rarely made art just for the joy of it, which is why I got into being an artist in the first
Right.
place.
Because you loved art.
Yeah.
Because I loved art. I loved making things. I loved using my hands to create things and to play
This is
around and to, follow my curiosity.
I feel like, and again, resonating deeply too, I had my 2 options were veterinarian or engineer.
Mhm.
Blood makes me pass out and no engineer. And those were the just like 2 options. And I wanted to, I was artistic. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a journalist. I read and wrote constantly. And my dad just was very point blank, like, "Artists are poor, starving, worthless humans." Like, that was the statement. And for me, my non-traditional path led me into drug addiction and rebellion, and I didn't get to go to college. I didn't get to do all these traditional things, and I didn't get a lot of that traditional conditioning. And so I've sort of been like an entrepreneur in certain ways my whole entire life.
Mhm.
And I've gone in and out of businesses the way that I wanted to. And I really actually like it's only been in later years where hustle culture feels like it's impacted me because
Mhm.
I've never had a job when I quit a job. I've always been in this like very independent mind space
Yeah.
of I can do this on my own or I can do this for you. It's one of those things that is like looking at it in hindsight going, why did I think I could be that way? But it really came down to I didn't get a lot of conditioning through college and education and like these formative things that are valuable that I actually value and I did later on. But I think doing it later let me be freely expressive
Mhm.
during that time
Yeah.
I
period of
could
my
see that.
life. Like I just didn't have, I did things in corporate spaces that people would be like, nobody does that. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, I don't know why,
Yeah.
like, why don't you do it this way? And it never even occurred to me that what I was doing was outside of a norm.
Yeah.
Until I finally
Yeah.
realized I was actually weird, and then I was like, "Oh, okay. I get it now, I'm sorry."
Keep that with you. It's
Oh, it's
beautiful.
Totally. Yeah.
built my
That's
life around
awesome.
it.
I get that because I never operated in the corporate world. I didn't have a corporate job or, I never did any of that, which so many of my friends did. So when I came to the corporate world as an outsider, bringing my expertise to work with teams and organizations, I had all this imposter complex.
Mm,
And now I talk to friends of mine who, worked, I have a friend who was a leader as a woman in the tech world for a couple of decades and bears the scars.
yeah, I'm
And
sure.
she's like, "Believe me, you are so lucky.
Mhm.
You are so lucky that you avoided all of that."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
instead of feeling all this imposter complex, now I can appreciate the fact that I didn't, just like you, didn't have all the programming that I definitely got from, going through college and going through a master's program and all of that. You didn't have all of that, and I didn't get all the programming from the corporate world,
It's true.
right?
Is there it really is I think this is actually a really good break point right now because 'cause I'd like to come back and talk more specifically about what you're doing in the corporate world and kinda
Sure.
what you're seeing and your experiences there, so why don't we take a quick break?
Let's do it. And we're back. We're back with Melissa Dinwiddie, and we're here discussing more about redefining success. And on this half, we want to talk about what you are doing, how you are helping companies like Google and Meta in their organization. So you mentioned play, and that my antennas were up. I loved playing. I play tag with my neighbors. I forced them actually, when we're raking lawns, and Stephanie has play dates
I have
scheduled on her calendar.
Zoom play dates that I send out.
Yeah. So
I love it.
how are you incorporating play in these mega companies to help them become more creative beings?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking the question. A lot of people think about play and work as being opposites. But in fact, play is not the opposite of work. As I like to say, play is how we make work more effective.
Yeah.
When you look at how kids learn, kids learn best through play.
Mhm.
And that doesn't suddenly stop when we hit adolescence.
Yeah.
It's actually that humans learn best through play. So, one of the things that I do is I actually help teams and organizations solve problems. And one of my specialty areas is creativity, but I actually talk about working around the areas of what I call the 3 C's: connection, communication, and creativity.
Like,
And that is the intersection of those 3 C's is where innovation lies.
mhm.
If it's kinda like a three-legged stool. If any one of those 3 C's is broken in your organization, then innovation's not happening. So, actually do a lot of work around communication, not so much person A and person B are having a conflict between themselves. That is I'm not the person that you call when that's happening,
Right.
but I am the person that you call when, say, this team of amazing researchers are really brilliant and they're having all these amazing insights, but they're not spreading throughout the organization.
Hmm.
Or
Interesting.
this team of brilliant engineers are doing incredible work, but they're getting passed over for promotions, and we're not getting the funding that we should be getting for our team, because they're brilliant, but they're not selling how brilliant they are. They're not effective at storytelling. Their executive presence, so called, is lacking according to the leadership higher up. So we really need to up level.
What do you
So
think allows a company, like, in your experience, to have that level of awareness that they need to bring in somebody focused on innovation versus somebody focused on, say, more traditional management? Like bringing in somebody you talk about like engineers not being, promoted or valued in the right way and like bringing in somebody that's like more focused on talent and stuff like that. Like what makes them think
yeah.
of you and that as a is
So honestly, it tends to be, who you know,
yeah.
sort of a thing. Like they know me
But how do
because
you get I'm curious from the perspective of you raising their awareness to understand that that's what they need.
Mhm.
It's like I
They
worked in
already
marketing
know
for
that
a lot
that's
of
what they
time.
need.
Do they really? Because
Yeah,
I always say, like, I worked
yeah,
in
they know
marketing
it.
for a long time, and people would come to me and be like, "Oh, I need a brochure," and you'd ask, like, 5 questions and be like, "You don't need a brochure,
Mhm.
you actually need an entire campaign," and, like,
Right.
and so that's sort of and I work as a coach, and I work with leaders and innovation too, and a lot of times I find people come to me thinking that they need one thing, but really they actually do need something else. They're
Well, that is
thinking
true as
more
well.
strategically and maybe not as on that emotive side, which is where all that creativity and
That
some
is absolutely true as well. I do get on calls with people where they think they need one thing, but in fact, they actually need something else. But often what I do get, I'm thinking specifically of
Yeah,
a couple of leaders who have reached out to me where their teams, they could see they really needed to communicate for greater influence and impact. And I have specific programs that I've designed for that purpose.
yeah,
And then I also have programs designed specifically around boosting. I would boosting creativity is sort of a shorthand. We're all creative,
yeah,
but what happens is that sort of gets covered up and tamped down by going through a school system that does not teach creativity. It actually teaches us how to obey a single authority figure,
yeah,
namely the teacher, and it teaches us to believe that we're not creative. And so we get to the end of our however many years of school, and a very small, percentage of people believe that they're creative, the people who identify as artists and musicians and those folks, and everybody else thinks, "Well, we're not creative. We're not the
Mhm.
yeah,
creative one."
that's very true.
Well,
And it's really hard to be creative when you think you're not. So what I do is I come in and I use tools, different methodologies from, for example, from the world of improv,
Mhm.
and then other tools as well from, like, Lego Serious Play is another tool that I use. But, for example, from the world of improv, I'll give you, an example
We're gonna do our
activity.
improv now, y'all, okay.
For here's one I love to share because it's easy for people to really grasp. In a communication program that I might run, if I want this team of people, say, to understand the concept of how to communicate with people who don't have the same, like, level of expertise as you. And happens a lot.
Mhm.
So, you are trying to explain something and it's just going over their head. And so you as the person who's trying to explain, you're getting really frustrated. Why are they so stupid? Why are they not understanding? So here is an activity that I might run. I call it the time traveler. I did not make it up, but it's a great activity.
Yeah.
So pair people up. One person is from the present time. Everything's normal for them. The other person is a time traveler from 500 years ago. So it's 1525.
Okay.
And so the person from the present time pretends that their cell phone has just gone off. And their job is to explain what this device is to their time traveling partner. Now, before I send them off, I poll the room. Let's talk for a moment about what's different for
Mhm.
the time traveler. What's different in 1525? How is their life different?
Mhm.
So we just do a little popcorn. So I can ask you two, how would life be different for somebody in 1525?
Well, they don't have instant communication the same way that we do.
Absolutely. Yep. What
Absolutely,
else?
mhm. They have to probably labor every day just for basic necessities in their life, like to eat or
Absolutely.
to live or anything. Like
Yeah, for sure.
like
Yeah.
real like labor to actually get the food, to grow the food, to
Mhm.
like
Right. They can't just go to the grocery
Right,
store.
right, right,
Yeah,
there's no conveniences in that sense.
no
No
conveniences, yeah.
conveniences.
So we do a few minutes of that when we sort of popcorn up things like no electricity, no running water,
Yeah.
there's no modern medicine, various different things come up,
Mhm.
right? So then I send them off to their whether it's on Zoom, a Zoom breakout room, or off to a corner of the room if we're in a physical location, and they have 2 minutes to explain what this cell phone is to their time traveling partner. But remember, this is 1525, so there's a high likelihood that the time traveler is gonna think that the present time person is a witch.
Yeah, demonic. Get
Is
that
You're
demonic.
witchcraft out of
you're
Exactly.
here.
exactly
So
right.
not only do they have to not only do they have to explain what their cell phone is, but they also have to convince them that they're not a witch.
Yeah, that
And to
this is not
not
the devil's device. And really, we don't actually know for sure if that's true or not.
Right, exactly. Right, and so they have to convince them not to condemn them to burn at the stake for witchcraft. It is an impossible task. It's very hilarious, people are laughing, and it's very silly, but we come back together after 2 minutes, and I poll the room, "Okay, how many witches are in the room?" Half the room raises their hand. But then I say, "Okay, time travelers, did anybody have a partner who did something that was effective?" And there's always somebody who did something that made their time traveler partner feel like, "Oh, yeah, that I that made sense to me." And it always, always, always invariably was some kind of analogy
Mm, yeah.
that related to the time traveler's life experience, right?
What they could
So
have
they
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so they found a common point of connection. So then we switch roles and I give them some different scenario. It's not a cell phone this time, it's something different. Now the present time person has a bit of a leg up because now they're thinking, okay, I have to find a common point of connection. I have to find an analogy that my time traveling partner is going to be able to relate to. And so there's a better ratio when I bring people together this time. There's still witches in the room, but it's a little bit better ratio this time. So here's the thing. This whole activity, it takes 10 or 15 minutes. It doesn't take very long.
Yeah,
It gets people laughing and it's really sticky
yeah.
because they just engaged in this activity. We debrief the whole thing. And then I ask them, like, how does this relate to your actual work life? And they start thinking about, oh my gosh, when I had a conversation with my cross functional teammate or when I talked to my spouse or whatever. And I get so many emails and responses back, and when they come back again, because my programs are not just a one-off kind of a thing, because
Right.
that's not nearly as effective as when I stretch it out over multiple weeks, we come back again, and people always report back, I was talking with, again, my cross-functional teammate. I started to get frustrated, and then I realized, "Oh my gosh, this is just like that time traveler activity."
That's
And it's
powerful.
on me. It's not their fault that they can't understand.
Mhm.
Mhm.
My responsibility to put myself in their shoes and figure out, what's an analogy that I can use to help them understand. It changes how people actually behave.
Yeah, that's
So,
very powerful.
yeah, so that's just one example, and I have a bazillion of these kinds of activities. Sometimes they're pairs, sometimes it's the whole group. They're
Mhm.
all different, but the idea is to help people sort of identify metaphorical muscles that they can then start to engage with and strengthen.
I love this. We were looking at your website and,
A lot.
yeah, we're big fans of your work.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
Yeah.
and with this sort of, like, this game that you're playing with them, or this is, um, yeah, I'll call it a game. I'm losing my
Yeah,
mind, but this game that you're playing with them, it allows them to not focus on being perfect. They can
yes,
actually work on, like, it seems like it's continuous for them versus they need it to be immediate, like, how they're
yes,
communicating with their cross-functional partner is assuming that they get it on the first time, the first try, and it's, like, all rooted in perfectionism, but your work kinda unravels the need or the requirement for things to be perfect, and that
yeah,
reminds me of your make crap.
yes,
I love that because for me, I've been a perfectionist and being, brought into, like, patriarchal white supremacy, like, there was no room for me to be anything other than perfect, if not better than perfect, and
yeah,
that is just simply impossible to achieve. So you can imagine internally, I've been just screaming,
yeah,
but I didn't know until last year or the year before that I could make a mistake and no one would be harmed. You know? So, your mate crap almost brought tears to my eyes. Could you talk a little bit
mhm.
more about that process?
Yeah, boy, that really touches me that you said that. So lifelong perfectionist here as well,
Hey,
and
girl.
yeah, I now call myself an intentional imperfectionist. I have claimed imperfection um, as a label. And what I mean by that is that I forgive myself for being human.
Hmm.
And I practice, and intentional imperfectionism also just basically means I practice self compassion. I allow myself to be human. And when I do something that's human, I get to step back, acknowledge that, common humanity, step outside of the distress, and practice self kindness.
Hmm.
And I highly recommend the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, who is the world's foremost expert on self compassion. And she has a book that I highly recommend called Self Compassion. And for me, it's been life changing practicing self compassion. In fact, I have what I refer to as my golden formula, which is self awareness plus self compassion equals the key to everything good.
Hmm.
First, we need the self awareness piece, which is really checking in with yourself, understanding where are you? How do you feel? What's going on? What's working? What's not working? Just really understanding yourself and being aware. That's the self awareness piece. And then the self compassion piece is three steps it's mindfulness, that ability to really step outside of the distress, outside of what's happening and look at it from the outside. The second piece is awareness of common humanity, that you're not the only one who's ever experienced whatever's happening right now.
Mhm.
And the third piece is the self-kindness.
I think that's beautiful. When we talk about these things that are so important and really critical to our well-being as humans, and then when we take that back into the work you're doing in business spaces, I'm curious if and where you see resistance in your work, how that shows up in the process.
Mm.
Does everybody just buy in right away and they're all excited, or do you see people struggle, and in what ways does that show up?
So there's always sort of a bell curve
Yeah,
in of responses to anything
sure.
that you bring forward. Um,
Well, I think of
and
resistance as part of the growth process too, and that's why I ask about it because I think sometimes when you're resisting, you're actually kind of expressing where the real issue is, like what.
Yeah, I think that can be true for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that of the 3 steps in my Create the Impossible framework, of which make crap is the second step. The
Mhm.
first step is play hard,
Mhm.
and the second step is make crap. And I think that one is probably the most sort of revolutionary for,
That.
the sort of corporate world to engage with, and I think it's probably the most important.
Yeah.
It's the most challenging and the most important
And your
because
third step, because
it's the second step.
I know,
Play
but you said the
the
first 2.
3rd step is learn
Learn
fast.
fast. Thank you. I just for the audience, I wanted them to hear all 3
Yeah,
steps
so it's
together.
play hard, make crap, learn fast.
Perfect.
And the learn fast is really to approach every experience as a growth
I
opportunity.
think once you're willing and able to make crap, it's easy to learn
Oh,
fast
what?
because
Yeah,
you can, like, really
yeah,
just dive into
You're putting yourself out
that
there.
expansion mode,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
You're like, "Oh, it's okay. I can, like, mess this up and learn from it." And it becomes then part of the process
yeah.
instead of a barrier or, obstacle, I guess.
So, is it I think you were alluding to this or about to talk about this. Is the resistance in the second stage of make crap for most
I
people?
think that's where I get the most resistance, and where I see it in the corporate world is there's a lot of lip service paid to the idea of, "Yeah, we want people to take risks and we want to, let yourself fail and it's fine to fail." But it's just lip service
Yeah,
because then when you do make a mistake, when you do fail, you get punished for it.
yeah,
You either get shamed, you get demoted, or you get fired.
Mhm.
And that's not the same thing at all. That is not creating psychological safety. That is not actually, giving people permission to be imperfect.
Mhm.
That's shutting people down.
Yeah,
and creating the absolute opposite effect.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious in the work that you do, how much do you see organizations that really are capable of sort of modeling that behavior of, like, modeling how to fail up, so to speak, how to fail forward, like, which is
There's a lot of work to do.
yeah. Fail forward is, like, one of my favorite phrases, it's like, I fail forward all the time, like, oh my god.
Yeah, the shareholders would prefer that, if it was a failure forward, it's a big pile of money.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. But, that's sometimes, I talk about sometimes, like, we step over dollars to pick up dimes all the time because 'cause we're so shiny object driven, and we miss out on the fact that, like, oh, if we would've just, like, taken that slower step, that dollar would have been more relevant, and so, yeah, that I think that capacity and willingness to see failure as progress in the right
Yeah,
ways, I mean, there's abject failure, where, like, I mean, I guess we can talk about it that, but in the space of innovation and learning, I don't know how you make progress without failure, I mean, like, it's literally an impossibility. It doesn't exist, and so it's like if, the whatever the light bulb, there were 999 of them before the one worked. I mean, it's like there were 999 failures before the one thing works, and that's really the truth of innovation. And I agree with you about the lip service. I talk about value alignment in organizations all the time, and how many organizations, like 90% of organizations have that they value innovation or something like it in their value statements,
right.
but then when they do studies on, like, business leaders and they ask, like, "Do you want innovative people in your business?" They're like, "Oh god, no." Like, they are too disruptive, they ask too many questions, like, we just need people to put their heads down and do their jobs, and so, you're right, there's a real, like, connection there between what businesses say, what organizations
Yeah,
say they want and say they value, and then what they actually express in their values, how that
yeah,
comes out through action, and so, I think it's sad because it's self-limiting behavior at the end of the day, like, it's very
it is.
self-limiting, it prevents them from truly being expansive, and just being able to take some risk,
Mhm.
I mean, I think the risk is always put down to the individual, and I think organizations and shareholders need to be a little bit more risk willing, frankly. Like, they need to take
I
as
agree.
much risk as they expect the average worker to take with their own life. And I don't think that
Yeah,
there's a balance there at all, so
yeah, and it really also, so much of it comes down to leadership, and leadership needs to be willing to model and demonstrate vulnerability and risk taking, and if leadership is not willing to show up and show that they can make mistakes and
it's really
model that,
interesting. Yeah, I read tarot, and in tarot, one of the cards is strength. And in tarot, what strength like we in our society, you opened up at the beginning talking about sort of like what our current examples of success are right now,
Mhm.
like, and what's being displayed to us and whether or not that aligns. And tarot, strength is actually a feminine energy card,
Mm,
and it's about control. It doesn't
mm,
really have anything you can be as strong or as powerful as you want, but if you don't have any control over that energy,
Mhm.
then you're just chaos, right? You're not strong, you're actually just chaos, you're destructive. If you can control and channel that energy, that's power. That's actual power. And I think that we lose that aspect of what strength looks like. Strength just looks, to us like, a ram truck, like ramming into a wall, knocking it down, and wow, that's power, and it's like, or strength might look like a tweeter temper tantrum. I don't know.
Mhm.
Strength looks a lot of different ways to us right now that to me don't feel strong.
Mhm.
To
yeah,
me, they feel performative. It feels like performative strength, but not really the essence of what real strength is and what real power is. And that's that ability to control. And I think that relates into the space of innovation because it takes some strength to be willing to fail. It takes some
absolutely.
strength to put yourself out there in that way and to take those types of risks. It takes an internal fortitude.
Huge amount. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say I think in business, failure in business, I think it's not that it cannot evolve and change because we are seeing that with the work that you're doing, long term, allowing employees to feel empowered to fail forward, fail fast, etc. But I think because of everyone has a master, so to speak. Like even the CEO has a master in the shareholders, right? And the shareholders run the company, the board, like, so the CEO may have the intentions to allow their team to fail forward, fail fast, and give them the opportunity, but they have to answer to the board and the shareholders who want a return on their investment. So
Mhm.
I also think that this could be like um a conversation in changing how like our businesses are run or capitalism to actually like spark that change. I think it's like a yes and conversation. Like, yes, we need to be able to fail in business at work, but we also may need to like decide like is the current structure, is this appropriate?
Right.
Like, does this actually benefit and foster innovation?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
do think that there is a something that is constantly, we talk about shareholders a lot. We don't talk about shareholder accountability pretty
Mhm,
much ever at all.
Mm.
And I think that that is a huge, huge, huge challenge in the way that we run our businesses and the way that we're allowed to innovate, the way that we even treat, the people in our businesses.
mhm,
And so I think it's all very relevant. We're coming up on
mhm.
time. So I'm curious. This has been like I feel like this is like, the first of many conversations.
Melissa, we've thoroughly enjoyed meeting with you, and we wanna introduce you to Melinda Rothaus.
Yes. Y'all would
Mm.
actually really sync up very, very well. She is also a creativity innovation play specialist and also
Oh,
a
cool.
musician. And also
Yes.
y'all have so many like syncs that yeah, maybe y'all can't meet each other. You might be doppelgangers. I'm teasing.
You
No.
can't exist in the same place.
She,
You're based
she
here in Austin.
yeah, she's here in town, and she was actually a guest on one of our earlier episodes, so that we'll make a point to do that. So let's do some takeaways from this discussion. Shaniqua, what do you got?
Well, Melissa, as I mentioned before, just like knowing that I can be imperfect. I loved your take. You mentioned intentionally imperfect. I'm taking that with me. And being self-aware and I appreciate your thoughts around being imperfect. So that's a takeaway that I will forever cherish.
Awesome.
What about you, Stephanie? Or Melissa, do you want to go next?
Oh, wow. Oh my god, I'm put on the spot here. Um, well, having a conversation with people who take things away from what I say is always really, validating. So, I love uh, I was on a guest on a podcast yesterday, and what, what this conversation, I think, sort of validated from the conversation I had yesterday. The host was sharing that my Create the Impossible framework, which is really so much about generating breakthroughs and innovation,
Mhm.
he was sharing that for him, it felt like, given my background, it was as much about, resilience. And that feels like from from what we were talking about today and about the, imperfection and all of that, feels like a validation of what I heard from that host yesterday. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of a takeaway
Well, you'll
that
have to send us a link to that podcast
Yes.
episode too, so we can check it out.
I will once it goes live, yeah.
What
That's
was your
great.
takeaway, Stephanie?
So you know what? I had so many takeaways, and really just that the whole, really at the core, like what we look at as success and hustle culture. Why I cannot say that word right now because it doesn't fit into my vocabulary. Literally, it like just doesn't. That it's a lie. that like really we're and I think the most important thing about it, it's like it's fine if we're being manipulated by a system and we can, but what it's when we're allowing when we're not allowing that self-awareness, that self-kindness, when we are lying to ourselves and trying to convince ourselves of something, that that in and of itself is where we really need to begin to evolve. It's just recognizing our own truth and then bringing that forward into these spaces that are expecting us, like, to do so much for others without really that internal fulfillment coming back to us. I
Right.
feel like it's just something we need to claim, and more people are claiming it, and I think, people like Melissa that are bringing not just the awareness of that it needs to happen, but methodology, because we've lost it, like we've lost the ability. It's to our point, it's been conditioned out of us through education. It's been conditioned out of us just through capitalist, mindsets and things like that. And so, yeah, I think we have a lot of relearning to
Mhm.
do, but there's so much opportunity and
True.
possibility. I mean, so to me, it's very exciting. Like, I love it when we're on the change is like my favorite thing. Nobody likes it but me. I love it when we're on the precipice of
Yeah.
change. It's like it's just so
Because we get to
incredible.
decide how we design it, so it's really exciting.
Absolutely. That's so I don't know if that takeaway made sense either, but God, I'm all full in my head right now. I'm like, gonna have to set up a play date with you.
All about that. Melissa, where could our guests find you? And Stephanie made this earlier. Who would be the ideal?
Who should
Um,
look for you?
yeah.
Mm. Well, you can find me at my website, which is my name, melissadinwiddie.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Again, my name, Melissa Dinwiddie. I also have a YouTube channel. Again, my name, at Melissa Dinwiddie.
Very
And
well branded.
you can follow you
Hmm.
can follow my art. I create art,
Ooh,
little
show us the art.
doodles and
Ooh.
abstract, spontaneous abstract improvisational artworks, also known as doodles,
Nice.
on Instagram. This one breaks the pattern. It's at a underscore creative underscore life.
Nice.
And also I made a little gift for your podcast listeners. It's a free one-page checklist. Actually, I you know what? I have a QR code. There it is. A
Very
free
Incredible.
cool.
one-page checklist that gives you a quick, practical way to unlock fresh ideas and spark innovation fast. It's called my Impact Innovation Checklist, and it's especially great if you think you're not the creative type. And I made a special bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/FITI thank you. All
Aw,
one word, all lowercase.
thank
That's
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. This is incredible.
Ah, I'm so excited. It's like our first guest gift.
Oh,
Oh.
yay!
Thank you.
Well, this
Oh, and
is
then the,
yeah.
ideal people to reach out to me, if you lead a team, and especially, although not exclusively, but especially teams of sort of more analytical folks, that's kinda my sweet spot, but any kinda team leaders, I love to work with teams. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Incredible conversation today, Melissa. Thank you so much again for joining us today. It's been life changing and
Oh.
also like validating as well.
Super robust. We rarely take the whole hour, so this has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This has just been incredibly a rich conversation and just a complete and utter honor and delight to be here. So thank you.
Excellent. You wanna close this out?
Yes. Please make sure, if you like this episode, to like, share with your friends, coworkers, family, comment, and thank you so much. We'll see you again next episode.
Awesome. Bye, y'all. Yay.